The valley was going to become a grave. HFY knew this with the certainty that came from 3 days of constant fighting. She crouched behind a broken piece of metal, her 4 arms gripping her weapon tight. Around her, 46 soldiers from different worlds waited for the final attack. They were tired. They were hungry. Most of them were wounded. The Drath would come soon. HFY could see them gathering on the hills above. There were so many. 300 warriors, maybe more. They had tried to break through twice already. Both times, HFY's soldiers had pushed them back. But it had cost lives. 16 of her people were dead. The rest would not survive another fight. Behind them stood the reason they could not retreat. The orbital spear rose from the ground like a metal giant. It was a weapon meant to shoot ships from the sky. 3 days ago, it had protected this moon. Then the Drath had attacked and damaged it. Now it was broken, useless. But the Galactic Council wanted it protected until help arrived. So HFY and her soldiers stayed and fought and died, Captain, HFY said, moving close. The young officer's fur was matted with dirt and blood. We have ammunition for maybe 1 more hour of fighting. After that, we use blades, HFY nodded. She had known this was coming. Tell everyone to prepare. When the Drath attack, we hold as long as we can. HFY's ears flattened against his head, a sign of fear among their people. But he said nothing. He just nodded and moved away to tell the others. Across the defensive line, HFY saw Hyun working on a broken shield generator. The young engineer had clever hands, but no experience with war. She had been crying earlier. Now she just looked empty. That worried HFY more than the tears. Near the orbital spear, Elder Mirai stood like a statue made of crystal. The Quellan did not fight. Their people believed in peace above all things. But Mirai had stayed anyway, using their abilities to create shields of light that protected the wounded. It was not much, but it was something. The sun was setting. The Drath liked to attack at night. HFY checked her weapon 1 more time. She thought about her homeworld, about the garden where she had played as a child. She would not see it again. That was fine. Every soldier knew death might come. She just wished she could have saved more of her people. Then the sky screamed. Everyone looked up. Something was falling through the atmosphere, burning as it came. It was a ship, but it was breaking apart. Pieces of metal tore away and fell like rain. The ship was trying to land, but it was dying. HFY watched it disappear behind the far hill. A moment later, an explosion lit the sky. Smoke rose in a black column. What was that? HFY asked. A crash, HFY said. Some poor pilot who got caught in the fighting. She turned back to watch the Drath lines. The enemy had seen the crash, too. They were pointing and talking. Good. Maybe it would distract them for a few more minutes. Then HFY's radio crackled. A voice spoke in Galactic Standard, but the accent was strange. This is Commander Taemin of the Human Expeditionary Fleet. I'm picking up a distress beacon from your position. My ship is destroyed, but I'm mobile. Permission to approach? HFY froze. Human. This was a human. She had heard stories about them. Everyone had. They were the newest species to join the Galactic Council only 50 years ago, but they had made a reputation quickly. Humans fought differently than other species. They did not retreat easily. They did not surrender when the odds were bad. They just kept fighting until they won or died. You're alive? HFY asked into her radio. Barely, the human said. There was pain in his voice, but also something else, determination. I saw your beacon when I was falling. You're in trouble. We're surrounded by Drath warriors. 300 of them. We have 47 soldiers and limited ammunition. If you can walk, you should go the other direction. There was a pause. Then the human laughed. It was not a happy sound. Captain, I just crashed my ship into a moon. I'm injured, my armor is damaged, and I have maybe 2 days before internal bleeding kills me. I'm not walking anywhere except toward that beacon. So I'll ask again, may I join the battle? HFY looked at HFY. The young officer's eyes were wide. Around the defensive line, other soldiers had heard the conversation. They were staring at her, waiting. She made her decision. Permission granted. But human, we're about to have a very bad night. Then I got here just in time, Taemin said. 20 minutes later, HFY saw him coming. He walked slowly, limping. His armor was human-made, different from anything she had seen. It was painted dark green and covered in scorch marks. Pieces of it were missing. One arm hung at a strange angle. But he kept walking. He was dragging something behind him. As he got closer, HFY realized it was a plasma cannon. The weapon was almost as big as he was. It must have weighed twice what he did, but he pulled it step by step across the rough ground. When Taimin reached their defensive line, he stopped. Through his helmet's faceplate, Haiwan could see his face. He was young, maybe 30 cycles. His skin was pale and covered in sweat, but his eyes were sharp and alert. "Commander Taimin," he said. "Sorry about the entrance." Haiwan gestured at the plasma cannon. "You brought a present. Pulled it from my ship before the reactor went critical. Figured you could use the firepower." He looked around at the defensive positions. His eyes moved quickly, taking in everything. "You've been here 3 days?" "Yes. The Drath have attacked twice?" "Yes," Taimin nodded slowly. "They'll come again tonight. Probably in the next hour. They think you're broken." He looked at her. "Are you?" Haiwan felt something stir in her chest. Anger, maybe, or pride. "We're still here." "Good." Taimin set down the plasma cannon. He touched controls on his armor and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed the valley, the hills, their positions. "Show me where they attacked before. Show me where your weak points are. Show me what ammunition you have left." Jiwan stepped forward. "Human, we appreciate your arrival. But you're one soldier. One wounded soldier. What can you do that we haven't already tried?" Taimin looked at him. There was no anger in his expression, just a tired certainty. "I can teach you how humans fight. We're very good at winning battles we should lose." He touched more controls. The holographic display changed, showing new defensive positions, different angles, aggressive counterattack routes. On Earth we have a saying, "The best defense is a good offense." You've been fighting to survive. That's noble. But if you want to live through tonight, you need to fight to win. Haiwan studied the display. The tactics were strange, aggressive, risky. They went against everything she had been taught at the military academy. But as she looked at them, she began to understand. Taimin was not trying to hold ground. He was trying to break the enemy's will. "This could work," she said slowly, "or it could get us all killed faster." Taimin nodded. "Yes, but Captain, you were already dying slow. At least this way you die fighting." He paused. "Or maybe you don't die at all." On the hills above, the Drath began to move. The final attack was coming. Taimin saw them too. He picked up the plasma cannon and moved to a firing position. "Well then," he said quietly, "let's show them what happens when they corner desperate soldiers. Let's show them what happens when a human joins the fight." The Drath came at midnight like a wave of teeth and claws. They howled as they charged down the hills, confident in their numbers. 300 warriors against 47 defenders. It should have been a massacre, it was. Just not the massacre the Drath expected. Taimin had spent the evening repositioning soldiers. Haiwan watched him work and saw something she had never seen before. He did not just place people where they could shoot. He placed them where they could make the enemy afraid. He created kill zones where the Drath would pile up on their own dead. He set up false positions that looked important but were empty. "War is not just about killing the enemy," Taimin explained as he worked. His voice was strained. He was in pain, Haiwan could tell. But he did not stop. "War is about breaking their will to fight. Make them think every step forward costs too much. Make them hesitate. Make them afraid." When the Drath charged, they hit the first line of defenses. Mines that Hyun had reprogrammed exploded in sequence, creating a wall of fire. The Drath who survived the blast ran forward into the plasma cannon fire. Taimin had positioned himself where he could see the entire battlefield. He fired with careful precision, not at the most dangerous enemies, but at the leaders, the ones the others followed. "See that one with the red markings?" Taimin called to Jiwan. "That's their squad leader. Kill him and the others will pause. They'll need to reorganize. Those 5 seconds of confusion are worth 20 dead soldiers." Jiwan aimed and fired. The Drath leader fell. Just as Taimin predicted, the warriors around him stopped. They looked confused. In those 5 seconds, Haiwan's soldiers killed 12 more. The Drath pulled back after 20 minutes. They left 50 dead behind. Haiwan's forces had lost no one. She could not believe it. "They'll try again," Taimin said. He was breathing hard. His armor was leaking some kind of fluid. "But they're scared now. They don't understand what changed." "What changed is you," Haiwan said. Taimin shook his head. "No. What changed is you're fighting smart now instead of just fighting hard." He coughed and Haiwan saw blood on his lips. "Tell me about the orbital spear." "Can any of it still work?" Hyun stepped forward. She had been quiet all evening, but now she spoke. "The main weapon is destroyed. But the targeting systems still function, and the power core has maybe 30% capacity remaining. 30%, Taemin repeated. He looked up at the massive weapon. Could we fire it once? Just one shot? Maybe, Hyun said. But it would require major repairs. Days of work, and we would need to calibrate it manually. The automated systems are gone. How manually? Hyun pointed to the base of the orbital sphere. Someone would need to be there at the calibration station. They would need to input the targeting data while the weapon is charging. It takes about 5 minutes. 5 minutes exposed at the base of the spear, Taemin said softly. That's a death sentence if the enemy knows you're there. Yes, Hyun said. Taemin nodded and said nothing more. But Haewon saw him looking at the Drath positions on the hills. She saw him calculating something. The Drath attacked twice more before dawn. Each time Taemin's tactics broke them. He used noise to make 47 soldiers sound like 200. He used light and shadow to make defensive positions appear in places they were not. He had soldiers fire and then immediately move so the enemy could never predict where shots would come from. But the cost was showing. Ammunition was nearly gone. 3 soldiers were dead. And Taemin was getting worse. Haewon saw him leaning against a rock between attacks, his hand pressed to his side. His armor's medical display showed red warnings. When the sun rose, the Drath pulled back to their camps. They would rest during the day and attack again at night. That was their pattern. Haewon found Taemin sitting alone, looking at his holographic display. He was studying something, but she could not see what. You're dying, she said. Taemin did not look up. Yes? How long? My armor's medical system says 48 hours. Maybe less. Now he looked at her. His face was pale and drawn. But I knew that when I walked toward your beacon. Haewon sat down beside him. Why? Why come here if you knew? Taemin was quiet for a moment. 8 years ago, I was part of a unit defending a colony on Proxima 7. We were 30 soldiers against 2,000 raiders. We held for 8 months. Do you know why we could hold that long? Why? Because we refused to accept that we would lose. Every day we woke up and said, today we fight. Tomorrow we can worry about tomorrow. We adapted. We learned. We made the enemy pay for every meter. He looked at the soldiers sleeping around the defensive positions. My unit held until the relief force arrived. But I was the only one who survived. All my friends died protecting that colony. That must have been hard, Haewon said. It was. For 8 years I've been asking myself why I lived when they didn't. Why I got to walk away. Taemin touched his side where he was wounded. Then my ship started falling and I saw your beacon. 47 soldiers surrounded and fighting. And I thought, maybe this is why. Maybe I lived so I could be here now. So you and your people don't die alone in this valley. Haewon felt something in her chest. Respect, she thought. And something more. You humans fight differently than we do. How so? We fight for our people. For our worlds. For territory and resources. Haewon looked at the broken orbital spear. You fight for ideas. For principles. You fight because you believe someone has to stand. Taemin smiled. It was a tired smile. Yes, someone has to stand. That's what humans believe. Even if the odds are impossible. Even if we know we'll probably die. Someone has to stand and say, not one step back. Not today. He turned back to his display, which is why I have a plan. It's crazy. It will probably fail, but if it works, we won't just survive. We'll win. Tell me, Haewon said. Taemin expanded the holographic display. It showed the Drath camps on the hills, but it also showed something else. 10 kilometers away, in the next valley, there were more heat signatures. Large ones. Those are their landing ships, Taemin explained. That's how the Drath got here. That's how they're planning to leave when they're done killing us. His finger traced a line from the orbital spear to the landing ships. We repair the spear enough to fire once. Not at the Drath army. At their ships. We destroy their way off this moon. Haewon stared at the display. If we destroy their ships, they're trapped here. Exactly. 300 Drath warriors with no way to call for pickup. No resupply. No escape. Taemin looked at her. Suddenly, we're not the ones surrounded. They are. But someone would need to calibrate the weapon manually, Haewon said. For 5 minutes. The Drath would see them. They would attack. Yes, Taemin said quietly. That person would die. Probably. Haewon was quiet for a long time. Then she said, You're planning to do it yourself. I'm already dying. Might as well die doing something that matters. The others won't let you, HFY said. They've seen what you can do. They'll want to protect you, Taemin smiled again. Then you'll have to order them not to. You're the captain. They'll follow your orders, HFY stood up. She looked down at this human who had fallen from the sky to fight beside strangers. This human who was teaching her people not just how to fight, but why to fight. I'll think about your plan, she said. But Taemin, if we do this, you won't be alone at that calibration station. Someone will stand with you. That's not necessary, Taemin said. Yes, HFY said firmly. It is. You taught me something, human. You taught me that someone has to stand. Well, if you stand, then I stand beside you. That's what leaders do. She walked away before he could argue. Behind her, she heard him laugh softly. It was a sound of surprise and maybe respect. The day passed slowly. Taemin taught them more tactics, more ways to fight that seemed impossible but worked. And quietly, Hyun began working on the orbital spear, making the repairs that would let them fire one final shot. When night came again, the Drath would attack. But this time HFY's soldiers were ready. This time they would not just defend. This time they would show the Drath what happened when you cornered soldiers who refused to die. The Drath came at sunset with everything they had. They had learned from their previous failures. This time they came from 3 directions at once, trying to split the defenders. This time they brought heavy weapons. This time they did not howl. They came in silence, which was somehow worse. Taemin watched them come. He stood at the center of the defensive line, his damaged armor barely holding together. HFY saw him sway and put a hand on his shoulder to steady him. You should sit, she said. I'll sit when I'm dead, Taemin replied. Then he smiled. Which might be soon, so save me a good spot. Around them, the soldiers prepared. They had less ammunition now, less equipment, but they had something they didn't have before. They had confidence. They had seen Taemin's tactics work. They had seen one human change everything. Remember, Taemin called out to them. They want you to panic. They want you to waste ammunition shooting at shadows. Stay calm. Wait for clear shots. Make every bullet count. The Drath hit the eastern position first. 50 warriors crashed into the defenses like a hammer. But Jiwon was ready. He had learned from Taemin. He did not try to hold ground. Instead, he fell back, drawing the Drath into a narrow space between 2 large rocks. Then soldiers on both sides opened fire, catching the enemy in a crossfire. The Drath eastern push broke. 30 warriors lay dead in the narrow space. But the western attack was worse. 100 Drath came at once, and they had a heavy plasma weapon of their own. The first shot destroyed an entire defensive position, killing 2 soldiers instantly. Fall back to secondary positions, HFY ordered. Her people moved quickly, the way Taemin had taught them. They did not run in panic. They covered each other, moving in pairs. Taemin limped to the plasma cannon he had brought from his ship. He aimed carefully at the Drath heavy weapon. 1 shot. The plasma cannon roared and the Drath weapon exploded, taking 6 enemy warriors with it. But the effort cost him. Taemin fell to his knees, coughing blood. HFY ran to him. I'm fine, he said, but he was not fine. His armor's medical display was flashing red emergency warnings. Just need a minute. You need a hospital, HFY said. No hospitals on this moon, Taemin said. He forced himself to stand. Come on. The night's not over. The fighting went on for hours. The Drath kept coming in waves, and each wave was broken by Taemin's tactics and the defenders' courage. But the cost was mounting. 5 more soldiers were dead. Ammunition was almost gone, and Taemin was barely standing. During a brief pause in the fighting, Hyun appeared. Her hands were covered in grease and burns, but her eyes were bright. I've done it, she said. The orbital spear can fire once, but someone needs to calibrate it manually from the base station. Taemin nodded slowly. How long? 5 minutes to input the targeting data, then another 2 minutes for the weapon to charge. 7 minutes total, Taemin said. That's a long time to stand in one place during a battle. Yes, Hyun said quietly. She looked at him with something like fear. You're planning to do it, aren't you? Before Taemin could answer, Jiwon appeared. The young officer's face was grim. The Drath are regrouping for another attack. This will be the big one. They're bringing everyone. Taemin looked at HFY. Then we don't have time to wait. We do this now during their attack, while they're focused on the defensive line. You can't walk to the spear base in your condition, HFY said. I'll crawl if I have to. Taemin touched his armor controls. A data chip ejected from a slot. He handed it to Hyun. This has the targeting coordinates for the Drath landing ships. You'll need to input these into the calibration station. Hyun took the chip with shaking hands. I don't understand. Why are you giving this to me? Because you're going to do the calibration, Taemin said. Not me. Everyone stared at him. Haewon said, You told me you would do it. I lied, Taemin said simply. Or rather, I changed my mind. Hyun is the engineer. She knows the systems better than I do. She'll be faster and more accurate. He looked at the young alien. But you'll need someone to protect you while you work. Someone who can hold the Drath back for 7 minutes. That person will die, Hyun said. Her voice was barely a whisper. Maybe, Taemin said. Maybe not. Humans are hard to kill. We're stubborn that way. He looked around at all of them. But here's what I know. If we destroy those landing ships, the Drath are finished. They'll have no supplies. No reinforcements, no escape. They'll have to surrender or die slowly on this moon. Either way, we win. And if you die protecting Hyun? Haewon asked. Taemin met her eyes. Then I die knowing 47 soldiers lived. That's a good trade, Juan stepped forward. I'll go with you. Someone needs to cover your back. No, Taemin said. Haewon needs you here. The main defensive line is more important. Then I'll go, Haewon said. No. Taemin's voice was firm. You're the captain. Your people need you to lead. If I die, someone has to make sure my sacrifice means something. That's you. Elder Mirai had been silent through all of this. Now the crystalline being spoke, their voice like chimes. I will go. Everyone turned to look at them. Mirai stepped forward. My people do not fight. We believe in peace. But I have watched you all these days. I have seen humans and Velkari and others risk everything to protect each other. I cannot fight, but I can create shields. I can protect Hyun while she works, and perhaps I can protect the human as well. Taemin studied the elder. Then he nodded. All right. The 3 of us, then. We move when the Drath attack. This is insane, Haewon said. Yes, Taemin agreed. But it's the good kind of insane. The kind that wins wars. He checked his weapon one last time. You know what I've learned in all my years of fighting? The craziest plans work because the enemy never expects them. They think we'll act logically, carefully, but humans don't think that way. We think, what's the most aggressive thing we could possibly do right now? And then we do it. The Drath attack came 10 minutes later. 200 warriors charged the defensive line at once. It was everything the enemy had left. This was their final push. Now, Taemin said. He, Hyun, and Mirai moved. While the defenders focused on holding the line, the 3 of them ran toward the base of the orbital spear. It was 500 meters away across open ground. They would be exposed, visible, vulnerable. But the Drath were focused on the main battle. They did not see 3 figures running in the darkness until it was too late. A group of Drath warriors spotted them halfway there. 10 enemies broke away from the main attack and gave chase. Taemin stopped and turned. Keep going, he shouted to Hyun and Mirai. I'll handle this. There are 10 of them, Hyun cried. I can count, Taemin said. He raised his weapon. What happened next, Haewon saw from the defensive line. She watched through a scope as Taemin fought alone against 10 Drath warriors. He should have died in the first 30 seconds. Instead, he moved like something wild. He used his damaged armor's remaining strength to hit harder than he should. He used every dirty trick, every desperate move. He shot one enemy, stabbed another, used a third as a shield. It was brutal. It was violent. It was the most human thing Haewon had ever seen. When it was over, Taemin stood alone among 10 dead enemies. But he was not standing well. He fell to his knees. Even from a distance, Haewon could see he was badly hurt. But Hyun and Mirai had reached the calibration station. Hyun's hands flew over the controls, inputting the targeting data. Mirai stood beside her, creating shields of crystalline light that deflected incoming fire. More Drath saw them now. 20 warriors turned away from the main battle and charged toward the spear base. Taemin saw them coming. He tried to stand and fell. Tried again and managed to get to his feet. He limped to position himself between the charging Drath and the 2 people at the calibration station. How long? He shouted. 3 minutes, Hyun called back. Okay, Taemin said quietly. 3 minutes. I can do 3 minutes. He raised his weapon and started firing. 1 Drath fell, then another. But there were so many. They were getting closer. Taemin's weapon ran out of ammunition. He dropped it and pulled out a blade. The first Drath reached him. They fought hand to hand. Taemin's armor was failing, but he would not fall. Could not fall. Behind him, Hyun was working. Mirai was protecting her. They needed time. A Drath blade cut into Taemin's side. He barely seemed to notice. He just kept fighting. 2 minutes, another blade hit his leg. He fell but caught himself. Kept fighting on his knees. 1 minute, Taemin was bleeding from a dozen wounds now. His armor was sparking and breaking, but he was still between the Drath and the calibration station. Still fighting. 30 seconds, done, Hyun screamed. I'm done. The weapon is charging. Run, Taemin gasped. Both of you. Run now. Hyun and Mirai ran. The orbital spear began to glow as power built up in its core. The Drath warriors saw this and turned to flee. But it was too late. The weapon fired. A beam of pure energy shot into the sky, arced over the horizon and disappeared. 10 kilometers away, it hit the Drath landing ships. The explosion lit up the night sky like a second sun. On the defensive line, everyone stopped fighting. Drath and defenders alike stared at the distant explosion. Then they looked at the orbital spear. At its base, Taemin finally fell. This time, he did not get back up. The explosion in the distance changed everything. For a moment, there was complete silence on the battlefield. Drath and defenders alike stood frozen, staring at the mushroom cloud rising 10 kilometers away. Then the Drath began to scream, not war cries, screams of fear and rage. Their landing ships were gone. Their way off this moon was gone. They were trapped. HFY saw the moment the enemy realized what had happened. She saw panic spread through their ranks like fire. Some Drath turned to run. Others stood in confusion. A few kept fighting out of pure rage, but there was no coordination anymore. No plan. Push forward, HFY ordered. Her voice was steady even though her heart was racing. Press the attack. Show them no mercy. The defenders surged forward. They had been learning from Taemin for 2 days now. They knew his tactics. They knew his philosophy. Attack when the enemy expects defense. Be aggressive when they expect fear. Make them break. The Drath line shattered. Warriors who had seemed unstoppable now ran in all directions. Some tried to reach their camps on the hills. Some just ran into the forest. Within 10 minutes, the battlefield was empty except for the dead and wounded. But HFY was not thinking about victory. She was running toward the base of the orbital spear. Toward where Taemin had fallen, Ji-won reached him first. The young officer knelt beside the human and checked for signs of life. When HFY arrived, she saw Ji-won's expression and her heart sank. He's alive, Ji-won said quickly. Barely, but alive. Taemin lay in a pool of his own blood. His armor was shattered. Deep cuts covered his body. His breathing was shallow and wet-sounding. But his eyes were open. Did it work? He whispered. Yes, HFY said. She knelt beside him and took his hand. The ships are destroyed. The Drath are broken. You won. We won, Taemin corrected. He coughed and blood came up. I just helped. Hyun pushed through the crowd that was gathering. She had a medical kit and started working on Taemin's wounds immediately. But even as she worked, HFY could see the fear in her eyes. There was so much damage. Stay with us, HFY said. That's an order, human. Taemin managed a weak smile. Pulling rank on me now? His eyes started to close. That's good. You're learning to command. Don't you die, Hyun said fiercely as she worked. Her hands were shaking but steady. Don't you dare die. You taught me to be brave. You don't get to leave now. Trying, Taemin whispered. But I'm so tired. Elder Mirai knelt beside him. The crystalline being placed their hands on Taemin's chest and began to glow. Soft light spread from Mirai into Taemin's body. It would not heal him, HFY knew. The Quellan could not do that, but they could ease pain. They could give comfort. You did well, young human, Mirai said softly. You stood when no one expected you to. You fought for people you had never met. That is the truest form of courage. Taemin's breathing got worse. His hand in HFY's grip went cold. She thought he was dying. She thought these would be his last moments. Then from the sky came a sound, a roar of engines. Everyone looked up and saw ships dropping through the atmosphere. Big ships, human ships. They bore the markings of the human expeditionary fleet. Your people, HFY said. Your people came for you. About time, Taemin whispered. Then his eyes closed and he went still. The next hours were chaos. Human soldiers landed in drop pods. They secured the area and hunted down the remaining Drath warriors. Medical teams rushed to help the wounded defenders. and a trauma team surrounded Taemin, working frantically to save his life. Haewon watched as they loaded him onto a medical transport. A human officer approached her. He was older, with gray in his hair and scars on his face. "Captain Haewon?" he asked. "I'm Colonel Park, Commander Taemin's commanding officer." He looked at the battlefield, at the broken defenses, at the dead. "Tell me what happened here," so Haewon told him. She told him about being surrounded, about fighting for 3 days with no hope, about seeing a human ship fall from the sky, about Taemin walking toward their beacon when he could have walked away, about everything he taught them, everything he did. When she finished, Colonel Park was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "That sounds like Taemin. He's been trying to get himself killed heroically for 8 years now, ever since Proxima 7. The colonel looked at the orbital spear. "But it seems like every time he tries to die, he accidentally wins instead. Will he live?" Haewon asked. "I don't know," Park admitted. "But if anyone can survive injuries like that, it's him. Humans are stubborn, and Taemin is the most stubborn human I know." The human ships took control of the moon over the next day. They captured the surviving Drath warriors. They secured the orbital spear. And they gave medical care to all the defenders. Haewon was told to rest, but she could not. She kept going to the human medical ship to ask about Taemin. Each time, the doctors told her the same thing. He was in surgery. He was critical. They were doing everything they could. On the second day, Ji-won found her outside the medical ship. The young officer sat beside her without speaking. They watched human soldiers work to repair the damage to the valley. "I keep thinking about something," Taemin said. Ji-won said finally. "About how humans fight. About how they refuse to accept defeat." "What about it?" Haewon asked. "I think I understand now. It's not that humans are stronger than us, or smarter. They just have this belief that if they keep fighting, if they refuse to give up, eventually something will change. Eventually they'll find a way." Ji-won looked at her. "Before Taemin arrived, we had accepted we were going to die. We were just trying to die well." But he didn't accept it. He looked at the same impossible situation and said, "How do I win?" "And he did win," Haewon said. "We won," Ji-won corrected, using Taemin's words. "He just showed us how." On the third day, a human doctor finally came to find Haewon. Her heart raced as she stood to meet him. "Commander Taemin is out of surgery," the doctor said. "He's stable. Still critical, but stable." "He's asking for you." Haewon followed the doctor into the medical ship. They went through clean white corridors until they reached a room with a window. Through the glass, she could see Taemin lying in a medical bed. He was covered in bandages and connected to a dozen machines, but he was awake. The doctor let her go inside. Taemin turned his head slowly when she entered. His face was pale, but his eyes were alert. "You're alive," Haewon said. "Disappointed?" Taemin asked. His voice was weak, but he was trying to smile. "Surprised," Haewon admitted. She sat in a chair beside his bed. "The doctor said you should not have survived. I told you. Humans are stubborn." He looked at her seriously. "Your people? The other defenders?" 38 survived. "You saved 38 lives, Taemin." He closed his eyes. "And 9 died. 9 died fighting," Haewon said firmly. "Fighting because you gave them hope. Fighting because you showed them how to win. Those deaths have meaning because of you." Taemin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "On Proxima 7, all my friends died. For 8 years, I've been angry at the universe for letting me live. But these past few days, fighting beside your people, I think I understand now. Maybe I lived so I could be here. So I could help you. Maybe all of it had a purpose." "I think it did," Haewon said. "You changed us, Taemin. You changed how we think about war. About fighting. About what's possible." "Good," Taemin said. "Because I have a favor to ask." "What?" "When I'm healed, I want to help train your people. All the species in the Galactic Council. I want to teach them what I taught you. How to fight when the odds are impossible. How to win when you should lose." He looked at her. "Will you help me?" Haewon felt something warm in her chest. Hope, she thought. And purpose. "Yes, I'll help you. We'll do it together." Taemin smiled. A real smile this time. Together. I like that word. Yoon came to visit later that day. She had burns on her hands from working on the orbital spear, but she did not seem to notice them. She just stood beside Taemin's bed and cried. "Thank you," she said through her tears. "You taught me that being afraid is okay. That courage isn't the absence of fear. It's fighting despite the fear. You were always brave, Taemin said gently. You just needed someone to show you. Elder Mirai came too, the crystalline being touched Taemin's forehead and their light pulsed softly. You changed my people's understanding, young human. We thought peace meant never fighting, but you showed us that sometimes peace must be defended. Sometimes standing up to evil is the most peaceful thing you can do. I'm glad I could help, Taemin said. Over the next weeks, as Taemin slowly healed, something remarkable happened. Word spread through the Galactic Council about what had occurred on Velnar 4. About how 1 human and 47 defenders had held against 300 enemies. About how they had not just survived, but won. Other species wanted to learn. They wanted to understand how humans fought, how they thought, how they turned impossible situations into victories. Colonel Park came to Taemin's room one day with news. The Council wants to create a new military unit, a rapid response force that combines human tactics with alien abilities. They want you to help lead it. Taemin looked at Haiwan, who was visiting as she did every day. What do you think? I think, Haiwan said slowly, that you started something on this moon. Something important. We should see it through. Together? Taemin asked. Together, Haiwan confirmed. 6 months after the Battle of Velnar 4, Taemin stood in a training facility on the Council's central world. His body had healed, though scars covered his skin and he still moved with a slight limp. The doctor said he would always have that limp. He did not mind. It reminded him that he had survived when he should not have. Around him, 50 soldiers from 12 different species performed training exercises. They moved in coordinated teams using tactics that mixed human aggression with alien abilities. Velkari soldiers provided close combat expertise. Quellan created defensive shields. Humans taught adaptability and refusal to surrender. Together, they were becoming something new. Haiwan stood beside Taemin, watching the training with a critical eye. She wore the uniform of a commander now, equal rank to Taemin. They led this new force together, just as they had promised. Squad 3 is still hesitating on the counterattack, Haiwan observed. They fall back when they should push forward. Old habits, Taemin said. Most species are taught to preserve their forces, to retreat when things look bad. We're teaching them to do the opposite. It takes time. How long did it take you to learn? Taemin thought about Proxima 7, about watching his friends die one by one, about learning that sometimes the only way to survive was to attack when the enemy expected retreat. A long time, he said quietly. And it cost a lot. Haiwan touched his arm briefly. It was a gesture of understanding. She knew his history now, knew his scars, both the ones you could see and the ones you could not. The training session ended and the soldiers dispersed. Hyun approached carrying a data pad. She was part of the training team now, teaching engineering and quick repairs under combat conditions. The young Velkari had changed in 6 months. She stood taller, spoke with confidence. The fear that had defined her was gone, replaced by quiet competence. The new recruits arrived tomorrow, Hyun reported. 20 soldiers from 6 species, including 5 humans. Good, Taemin said. We need more humans to demonstrate the techniques. It's easier to show than explain. Speaking of humans, Hyun said with a small smile, Colonel Park sent a message. He wants to visit next week. Says he has something important to discuss. Taemin nodded. Park had been supportive of this project from the beginning. The colonel understood that the future of galactic defense was not one species dominating, but all species learning from each other. After Hyun left, Jiwon arrived. The young officer was now a lieutenant commander, responsible for tactical training. He had absorbed everything Taemin taught and added his own innovations. He was proof that humans did not have a monopoly on tactical thinking. They just approached it differently. The council representatives will be here in an hour, Jiwon said. They want to see a demonstration before they approve the expansion budget. Then let's give them a good show, Haiwan said. She touched her communication device. All squads prepare for combat demonstration. Live fire exercise. This is not a drill. The facility came alive with activity. Soldiers rushed to their positions. Weapons were checked. Equipment was prepared. Taemin and Haiwan moved to the command center where they could observe the entire exercise. The demonstration was designed to show what this new force could do. A simulated enemy force of 100 held a fortified position. The combined unit had only 40 soldiers. By traditional military thinking, they should not attack. They should call for reinforcements or find another approach. But this was not a traditional military unit. Taemin gave the order to begin. The combined force split into multiple teams. Humans led aggressive flanking maneuvers. Valkyrie provided shock troops for direct assault. Quellan created shields that allowed others to advance across open ground. A species of flying aliens provided reconnaissance and air support. But it was not just the abilities that mattered. It was how they used them. The teams adapted to changing conditions. When one approach failed, they immediately tried another. They supported each other without needing orders. They fought with the kind of coordination that usually took years to develop. The simulated enemy was defeated in 12 minutes. Minimal casualties, maximum effectiveness. When the exercise ended, the council representatives stood in silence. Finally, one of them spoke. She was an elder from a species Taemin did not recognize, with blue skin and 4 eyes. "Remarkable," she said. "I have observed military operations for 60 years. I have never seen such coordination between different species." "That's the point," Taemin said. "Every species has strengths. Every species has advantages. Separately, we're good. Together, we're unstoppable." "The human philosophy," another representative said. There was skepticism in his voice. "This aggressive approach, this refusal to retreat, it seems reckless." Haewon stepped forward. "I thought the same thing 6 months ago. Then I watched one human hold off 10 enemies while wounded and dying. I watched him teach my people to stop thinking about survival and start thinking about victory. Yes, human tactics are aggressive, but they work." The representatives conferred among themselves. Then the elder spoke again. "The council approves the expansion. You will receive resources for 200 additional soldiers and 3 more training facilities." After the representatives left, Taemin felt Haewon's hand on his shoulder. "We did it," she said. "Your vision is becoming reality." "Our vision," Taemin corrected. "I couldn't do this without you." They walked out of the command center into the evening air. The training facility was on a beautiful world, with purple grass and 3 moons in the sky. Taemin stood looking up at those moons and thought about Velnar 4, about the valley where he had crashed, about the desperate fight that had changed everything. "Do you ever think about going back?" Haewon asked, reading his thoughts. "To Velnar 4? "Every day," Taemin admitted. 9 soldiers died in that valley. I want to honor them." "Then let's go," Haewon said. "Next week when Colonel Park visits. We'll go together." So they did. A week later, Taemin, Haewon, Jiwon, Hyun, Elder Mirai, and Colonel Park took a ship to Velnar 4. The moon looked different now. The scars of battle had been cleaned up. The valley was peaceful, but at the base of the orbital spear a memorial had been built. It was simple but powerful. 9 names were carved into black stone, the names of the defenders who had fallen, and above those names words in multiple languages. Some stood because they had no choice. One stood because he refused any other option. Together they proved that the will to fight can be more powerful than any weapon. Taemin stood before the memorial for a long time. He thought about each soldier who had died, their faces, their courage, the way they had fought to the very end. "I'm sorry I couldn't save you all," he whispered. Haewon stood beside him. They knew the risks. They chose to stand. You gave them the chance to make that choice with hope instead of despair. "That's not nothing." Elder Mirai approached. The Quellan placed a crystalline hand on the memorial and it began to glow softly. "We remember them," Mirai said. "Not just their deaths, but their courage. They will inspire generations." Colonel Park stood with his hands behind his back staring at the memorial. "You know what I see here?" he asked. "I see the future. The Galactic Council has been around for 1,000 years, but it's always been divided. Each species looking out for themselves. But you, Taemin, you changed that. You showed them that we're stronger together. That's your real victory, not the battle, but what came after." They held a ceremony at the memorial. Each person spoke about the fallen soldiers. They shared memories and stories. It was a small gathering, but it felt important. Sacred. When the ceremony ended, Hyun approached Taemin. "I have something to show you," she said. She led him to the orbital spear. "I've been working on this in my spare time." The massive weapon had been repaired and modified, but now at its base there were plaques. Each one told the story of a defender who had fought in the battle. Their species, their role, their courage. "I wanted people to know what happened here," Hyun explained. "Not just that we won, but how we won. What you taught us. What we learned. She pointed to one plaque that stood separate from the others. That one's for you. Taman read it. The plaque described his arrival, his tactics, his sacrifice. But at the end it said something that made his throat tight. Commander Taman, Human Expeditionary Fleet. When asked why he walked toward battle instead of away, he said someone has to stand. His choice inspired an army. His courage changed the galaxy. I didn't change the galaxy, Taman said quietly. Yes, Haywan said firmly. You did. You started something that's growing every day. The training program has requests from 40 species now. Everyone wants to learn. Everyone wants to be part of this. That evening, they gathered around a fire near the memorial. It was a human tradition, sitting around a fire to share stories. But the others had adopted it. There was something primal and comforting about fire, something that spoke to every species. Jiwan told stories about the battle, about watching Taman fight alone against impossible odds, about learning that courage was not the absence of fear but action despite fear. Yun talked about working on the orbital spear while plasma bolts flew overhead, about Taimin standing between her and death for 7 endless minutes. Elder Mirai spoke about their species' transformation,